Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another lesson in computer science. Today is all about subclassing. I want us to really unlock the true potential in object-oriented programming by subclassing. So I want to start by just taking a look at uh, some class diagrams on this board here, and then we'll go to the code when we're done with that. So here's my plan. Now, I'm going to make a class diagram, and this is actually something that you really want to do a lot of when you are planning large programs. Because when you plan out a large program, a lot of times you have to kind of deal with a big picture before you go down into the nitty gritty of the code. We don't want to get lost. So the name of this class will be pet. And the pet class is going to have one constructor. Okay. Let me do blue for the constructor. And the pet constructor will take a string for the name and an int for our age. Okay? The pet class will then have two methods. I'll use red for methods. They will be string getName. So what that means is that a call to the method getName will return a string, and they will be int getAge. Now, you may be wondering why I'm not writing the word public here. Remember, public is assumed. We have to say it in our code, but if it weren't public, then we would have to show it a totally different way. So, in fact, I have some private methods in this class, but I'm not going to list them in my class diagram. That's too much information. All right, so that's what our pet class is going to do. I've described how you construct it and its behaviors. It has a name and an age that we can access. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to subclass that with a cat. And we show that with this arrow. Actually, I think the arrow is really going the other way. I've drawn it in the wrong direction. I don't know how much it matters, to tell you the truth, but I'm going to try and be accurate. So I'm drawing an arrow this way, meaning that I'm subclassing it. And what we say is we say that the cat class is a pet. And whenever you say that is a relationship, we say is, it needs to be true, right? Or your code won't make sense. You don't want to say the cat is a human. If you have a human class, don't subclass human. That doesn't make any sense. But a cat is a pet. Or at least it can be. But this particular cat is a pet. And my cat constructor is going to have two parameters just like my pet did. And they'll be string name and they'll be int age. And my cat class is going to have one additional method, which will be string speak. Okay, notice what I said. I said one additional method. That's because I've already inherited all of these public methods from the pet class. So I actually have getName and getAge, but I don't need to show that. I will also want to show you where it appears in our documentation. That's going to be important as well. Okay. Next, and I'll do this one out to the side. I want to make another subclass. Guess what I'm going to call this one? This one's going to be dog. So this is the dog class. The dog class will take one constructor, and that'll be a string name and an int age. And I'm kind of running out of room there. Hope you can kind of make out what I'm trying to say there. The dog class will have one additional method, also called speak. Okay? But I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to subclass again. I would like to subclass dog. I'm going to subclass dog with a LoudDog. The LoudDog class will have a constructor. And I'll make this one go over 2 lines here. That is a name and an age. And my constructors in these subclasses could have different amounts of parameters than what we call the superclass, the class that it's subclassing, or what we could say extending. I could have different parameters, less or more. These just happen to have the same. And this method will also have a speak. This class will have a speak. Well, this is called an override. And so I'm going to make a note of that. This is an override. So whenever you take a method that is defined in a superclass, so yes, dog is a subclass of pet, but it's a superclass of LoudDog. Okay? Whenever you take a method from the superclass and redefine it in the subclass, we call that overriding the method. Let's take a look at how this is going to work now in our code. All right, let's go ahead and make a new project. And I'm going to call this animals. Let's start with our first class. And I've got my diagram here. I want to keep that. I want to keep looking at that, okay? So I'm going to drag that over to my side of the screen here so I can keep looking at it, and hopefully you've got a reference to it somehow. Okay, so I'm going to say pet, and now I'm going to code the pet class. So I'm looking at my diagram, and let me just bring that over here so you can see it as well. I'll just take a little snip of it. How's that sound? Yeah, there we go. Now we can see it. Okay, so I need to do the following things. I need to make a constructor and 2 methods. That's fine. We're going to make all of our methods and classes public. All right, so let's start on the constructor. So apparently I have to store information about this pet that is a name and an age. So I need to come up with variables that can hold that information. So let's come up with those variables, and we'll keep our variables private. Notice we don't even include them in our class diagram. So I'm going to say private, I'll say p name. How's that sound for pet name, or pet name? There we go. Oh, I forgot the type. Private string pet name. Okay, let's do the next one. We got to do something for the age, so private int pet age. Okay, I've got a couple of private variables, so let's set them using the variables from the parameters here. So pet name will get the value name. Pet age gets the value of age. Super. Now we need to write methods. The first method is a method that returns a string. So again, we're going to put the word public, but the method's name really begins with this word here. What does it return? It returns a string. And what is it called? Get name. There are no parameters in it, and it simply returns the pet name. My next method that I need to write is called getAge, and it returns an int. And it simply returns the pet age. All right, super. We've completed the pet class. I'll compile it, and I'll double check it. Let's create a pet instance, and I'll make this pet, let's see, Messy. That's my bird, actually. And he is like 5. Okay, So I can go here. Yes, we can inspect and see some secret stuff, but I'm just going to say get age 5, get name messy. All right, cool. I want to add a couple more things. I want to add what are called Java docs. Java docs allow us to make documentation so that people can read it and understand what our code did. We've already learned about comments. This is a way you make a comment in Java. You make 2 slashes and this is a comment. But as soon as I go to the next line, I'm back to regular coding. If I want to make a comment that is multi-line, I do a slash star. And then I can say this is multi-line. And I can keep hitting enter until I close it off with the star slash. Now, these are what I would call private comments. And I love how BlueJ makes them gray, kind of hard to read, because they really are only for you. They are not comments for people using your class. Public comments are called documentation. And they include something also called annotation, which I don't want to go too much into, but I want you to at least be able to read it. So if you make a slash star, that's a multi-line private comment. But if you put 2 stars, that's a public Java doc. All right, so let's describe what this does. This constructs a pet with the given name and age. And you can hit enter. It's not going to affect how it formats. And I want to go over here to where it says source code. I want you to switch over to documentation. This is what we would give to our users so they can read. I'll warn you, sometimes this one has a little bit of trouble loading up because it's just kind of a quick view. But you can always go over here to your BlueJ workbench and click project documentation, which is Control J, and that one will always work. Sometimes this gets like hung up. All right, look, I've got a constructor, and it says the description that I gave. Isn't this nice and well formatted? Okay, note that it says the parameters. It says string name, int age. The string is actually a full name, java.lang. That is typical for documentation to give the full name. The full name of a string is java.lang. So, if you're a string and your mom calls you java.lang.string, you come here right now. You're in trouble because she used your full name, right? Let's go. Sorry, couldn't help it. All right, I'm going to add what's called an annotation. So @param is short for parameter, and it describes parameters. So I'll say name, the name of this pet. And it's traditional to use the word this to refer to this object here. As opposed to saying the name of the pet. It's saying the name of this pet that you're constructing. @param age, the age of this pet. And let's see what effect that has on my documentation now. Well, when I click on the constructor detail, you can see that I have more details about the parameters that tell me exactly what I need to do to construct the pet. So that's when you click on the hyperlink here that takes you to exactly what it does. And you could even say show source in BlueJ and things like that. All right, let's add a couple more annotations here, or Java docs. This one here is going to return the name of this pet. And this time I say @return this pet's name. I don't have to say that it's a string. It will know automatically because there's only one thing you can return. All right. Return the age of this pet. And then I say @return this pet's age. Now, it seems redundant when you look at these comments, I know, but this will not appear next to each other in the documentation. Now, I'm not asking you to be perfect at writing these Java docs. What I really want you able to do is to read them, because where we're going to have to be able to read Java docs to be able to do and use the graphics included and things like that. So now you can say I got my methods, and the description is no longer blank. Now, if I click on it, then I can see that returns, and it says what it returns exactly. So that is a well-written, well-documented class. Let's go ahead and make our next class. We're going to subclass with cat. Okay, so I'm going to make class cat, and I'll click OK, and I'll just get rid of all of that. And I'll say public class cat. Here's the keyword, extends pet. And that's all I have to do. In fact, um, I've actually made a pretty good amount of code right there. That word extends brings in everything I've done in pet. All right, we've got an error. It says constructor and pet in class pet cannot be applied to given types. Required, string int, found, no arguments. Reason, actual and formal argument lists differ in length. I wanted to go over this error because you're going to see this error a lot. And the reason why is that every class, every piece of code has to be in class in Java. That's not true for every languages, right? And in Java, because everything has to be in a class, every class has to have a constructor. We have not written a constructor. Java makes one for you automatically. And the default constructor that it will make is a public constructor with no parameters. Okay? Now, every class actually is a subclass. We haven't talked about that yet, but every class, even this pet I made, did subclass. You'll notice it says inherited from object. So every class has to subclass at least object, which is the superclass of everything. And in order to do that, it has to use the super constructor. So if you do not make a call to your superclass, Java will do it for you. And notice that the call to super class constructor has no parameters. And that's where the error is coming from. So it was confusing because you're getting an error for code you hadn't written, but Java writes it for you. That is part of the philosophy of Java. Java wants to be readable, quick, and adaptable. But if you're familiar with Python, Python wants to be explicit. So in Python, we always had to say super, even if we didn't need to when we subclassed. In Python, you would always have to write a constructor, even if you didn't need one. If you had to do anything in Python, you had to say it. In Java, it does a lot of things for you. So you just need to, which is convenient and great, but you need to be aware of it. So that's the problem here, is that we are calling the super constructor of pet with the wrong parameters because Java's doing it for me just because I haven't done it yet. Okay? All right. Now, let's fix that problem by writing a good constructor. Public cat. My cat constructor will take a name and it will take an age. I will then call my super constructor with the name and the age. I have now fixed that problem. Let's write additional methods. The additional method that I need is speak. Public string speak. And what does the cat say? The cat says meow, right? So let's make a cat. Notice it's already made our arrow showing us here that this is a subclass. So this is going to be called Kamala. That's one of my cat's names, and she's like ancient. She's like 18. All right. She's 17. Okay. I made a cat. I right-click on it. Notice that I have speak. That's the only method that you see here because the other methods are inherited from pet, get age, and get name. Just like we also have some inherited from object. We haven't talked too much about these. Most of these things are stuff that you don't want to use too often, but we will use some of them. Get age. So we still have the ability to get an age. We still have the ability to get a name. But now we have the ability to speak. All right, let's make another class. Let's make the class dog. Public class dog extends this. That's what makes it a subclass pet. And now I've inherited all the code from pet. Again, I'm getting that error because I haven't written my constructor yet. And remember, Java makes a default constructor that makes a default call to super of no parameters. So we need to write a better constructor. And I'll say super, name, and age. Then I will make my method speak. Public string speak. And what does the dog say, boys and girls? Woof. Or bark. All right, so I've got my dog now. Let's test out the dog. I'll make a new dog. Solomon. He's 5. I'll right click on speak. Woof. Those are the other methods that are inherited. They all still work. Okay. Now let's make another subclass. This one is called LoudDog. Make sure you use camel case, all capitals. Notice I don't have the inheritance arrow yet because I haven't written extends. Public class LoudDog. What are we going to extend? Dog. There's that error we talked about. Public LoudDog has a name and an age. And we'll call super with that name and age. All right, it's worthwhile to actually talk about what this does. Oops, there we go. So then when you call the constructor and you supply it with a name and an age, when I put the name and age in there, it gets caught by name and age, which then calls the super constructor. Super means you can interpret this as basically calling dog constructor. So then it goes to this class and puts name there and age there, which calls super with name and age. So then it finally goes all the way to the pet class where it's caught here and here. All right, let's take a look at the LoudDog class. I'm going to override the speak method. So I'll say public string speak, and I can say return woof. Woof. Now it barks twice, right? But I'm going to show it that way, but I'm going to show you another way of doing this that's really, really important. Okay, so let's take a look at, right quick, our documentation for LoudDog before we use it. Notice that we have a description of the fact that we are subclassing pet, dog, and then LoudDog. We have our constructor. No description yet. I haven't written any. I have my speak method. Look at this. Methods inherited from class pet. Get age and get name. And then I should have methods inherited from dog as well, but I've overridden it. So if I had written a different method, or if I had not overridden speak, it would say methods inherited from dog. But because I overwrote it, it says it there. Okay? Now, let's make a LoudDog. Bailey 4. So when I right click on it, you'll see I do have the inherited from dog, but look at what Blue Jay tells me. It says redefined in LoudDog. So we know that it's going to behave differently. So when you call a method that is overridden in the subclass, it's gonna use the overridden. I mean, that's what we want to do. We're changing the way it behaves. So a regular dog would just, if I have just a regular dog, then when that dog speaks, it's just woof. But when the LoudDog speaks, we override it to make it woof woof. Okay? One other thing I want to show about overriding is that a lot of times you want to use the code from the super class, but you just want to tweak it a little bit. And so we use the super method again. But I say super.speak. And what that's going to do is run the super class's speak. And then I'll do it again so that I get 2 of them. So super speak means I want you to call the super class's speak, which returns a woof, which will go right there, and then I do it again. And that's a nice way to do this, because now when I make changes to the dog class, see it says woof woof still. If I change this to bark, I've automatically made those changes to my subclass. And so now we should see bark bark instead of woof, because those changes are going to funnel through because I'm using super. So that's really a nice little technique to do. All right, so we talked about a lot. We talked about subclasses, we talked about class diagrams, and we looked briefly at annotation and looking at um, documentation. So, starting with the next lesson, we're going to begin a brand new set of things. We're going to be going to Greenfoot, and we will be making some really cool programs. I can't wait to share it with you. So, look forward to that. You can already go ahead and download Greenfoot. It's just like the color green and then foot like what you stand on, and start playing around with it. Okay, so until I see you next time, take care.